Hi, my name is Tammy Paul, and I want to say thank you to all of the Plano Camera Club for actually selecting me to be able to be a judge for you for this contest. I was excited to find out that I would be judging actual prints. It's important to get your work printed, and it's amazing how different a print can look from a photograph on the computer. You can change the feel of a photograph by the selection of the paper or the printed materials you choose, whether it's metal or luster paper or flat matte paper. It can look completely different. The way I judged the photographs and gave out the scores was strictly by the printed photograph. In other words, the way that the photograph was presented, such as its matting, weighed heavy on my decisions. I was pleased to see a variety of choices in the printed materials. I'm going to start off with the entry group. Plano Iron Horses. Score, 8. You had beautiful leading lines converging to a point, and unique angle with the horse turned towards the moving train. I found that very pleasant to see, as if the horse was looking at the train. It was a nice capture of the movement of the train without it appearing blurry. You did an excellent job in that. Improvement. Your lines converged to an uninteresting point, the lighted roof. This would be so much more interesting if there had been a person standing waiting for the train, so that the horse is looking at the person, and then you can also see the person waiting for the train. Something that you might want to think about for the next time. Bird Island Babies. Score, 10. You had a nice depth of field putting the birds in focus while the foreground and the background are blurred with a soft focus all around the birds. It was nice sunlight hitting on the birds and accentuating the lines. Your improvement. Be careful of the highlights creating hot spots and blowing out the details. I liked the choice of the metal paper, the metallic paper, but sometimes when you use metallic paper, it brings out those hot spots. Your whites get blown out very easily. Something to watch for. Also, there's a 1/2 inch gap between your photo and the mat on the bottom. Especially if you are going to enter anything into a gallery, you must have your mats to be precise. Early Morning on the Water. Score, 12, 3rd place. I found this to be the most interesting of the entry-level photographs. All of the interest points flow well together, creating eye movement around the photo. You had great diagonal lines and use of thirds. I love the way that the boat in the foreground is still and is more of a silhouette, while the boat in the background is moving in the opposite direction. You have good combination of blues and greens, and I love the light shining through the fog and the water and the trees. The trees frame the photo well. Try to dodge the bridge a little. I think this would help in keeping it from seeming too dull. Your photograph had kind of a lackluster or a dull finish to it, and that's what weighs it down. Your matting is nice, but if it was to be in a gallery, it would need to be either a white mat or an ivory mat. Also, I think that having the white mat would probably bring out the colors a little bit more. Mandarin Duck. Score, 13, 2nd place. I love the way that the water looks, the color, the reflection in the waters. You had a great depth of field, and the colors flow very well together with the duck and the water. I love the way that the water is swirling around and gives it that feeling of movement. Your matting is very nice. You did an excellent job. Improvement. Be careful of how close the tail of the duck is to the edge of the print. It looked a lot better online than it did the actual photograph. I think that when you went to print it and you went to mat it, you probably had to use up a little bit of that space. And so there's not very much room between the very tip of the tail and your mat. This actually influenced my decision in the score. Maroon Bells Fall Reflection. Score, 15, 1st place. You have beautiful leading lines, and reflection of the sun is a wonderful golden color. The reflection is almost a perfect mirror image, but is broken up by the rock that's sticking out of the water, and that draws the eyes downward, noticing the clarity of the water. Has a serene feel to it, and the detail in the trees is beautiful. I loved your matting. You did a great job. And you have a nice division between the mountain and the reflection just above the midway point. For improvement, try to get all of the cloud. That was the only thing that I found a little bit distracting. You had all of the cloud in the reflection, but you didn't up at the top. If you had had it in the top as well, I think that would have finished it off very nicely. Intermediate group. This was a very impressive group. All those who placed could have easily been judged with the Masters group as well. I could see that a lot of you have a lot of passion, and that's a wonderful thing. Midnight Hibiscus. Score 8. Beautiful display of the bright reds and the greens and the yellows on a black background. These colors always look very well together. And I love the way that the insects are trailing along the flower. It's a very good presentation on the board. It looked very nice. Your improvement, watch your aperture. The focus is on the insects, but you lost the focus on the flower. On the print, this became very distracting. When I looked at it online, it wasn't quite as bad, but when you printed it, then you lost a lot of that focus on the flower itself, and it was just the insects in it. I don't know, it was bothersome. Looking away. Score 8. This is a wonderful balance of complementary reds and greens. A good use of using the thirds. You had a great capture of the cardinal, and I love the depth of field that you chose, blurring out the background. Improvement. Try cropping it a couple of inches either off the bottom or considerably off the right-hand side to where you don't have quite as much of the plant showing. I think that would make it balance a lot better. Make sure that your mats fit your print. Mule's Ears Under Brewing Summer Storm. Score 9. The color palette reminds me of the vintage 70s photographs. You had a good use of thirds with the cool sky and the warm earthiness. It was a good choice of printing on the foam board with a white border around. I thought that it made it really stand out a lot instead of using a mat. I'm not sure if it would go into a gallery if you were ever to want to enter it into a gallery. Improvement. Bring out some of the yellow tones and give it a little bit more contrast. Peeling paint in New York City. Score 11. Good composition placing the lines at a diagonal. I love the color combinations showing all the different layers of the paint. It brings out all the different areas, and especially seeing the rust color was very impressive. Improvements. Add just a touch of contrast, maybe a little bit of a black tone or sharpness to bring out your lines. I think a bright white mat would help to bring out all of your colors as well. The mat that you chose, it kind of blends in with the yellow, and it makes it a little too soft. Purple Flower. Score 12. Added originality by giving the photograph a painterly effect in the Photoshop. It was a beautiful soft tones with plenty of contrast. I love the way that you did the vignetting around the focal point, not in the center, but to the focal point of the flower, which leads the eyes to the main flower. It was a great use of the rule of thirds. More originality in the presentation compared to a lot of them, just by the way that you put it on the board, like board on board, and then you also had the torn edges. I'm a big fan of the torn edges. I love it. I think it gave it a lot of special feel, especially with it being a floral. I thought that it made it feel more natural. Improvements. Maybe trying a lot of different various styles. It's about the only thing that a suggestion that I could give. You did it in the painterly. I would love to see it in other ways of either painterly or something different. Fishing the old-fashioned way. Score 12. I love the movement of the arm and the net going around the photograph. It's a great capture of a split second in time. The sunlight coming from the side and the sparkling on the water and the rocks really add a lot of contrast. Improvement. I would like to see a little less blur on the person, maybe by changing your shutter speed a bit. And be careful not to cut off the feet. I was curious about this one in the fact that as a print, you printed it as a vertical, but when I looked at it online, it was a horizontal. Autumn at Maroon Bells. Score, 13. The choice of the metallic paper makes the fall colors and sunlight on the mountains really pop. It's beautiful cascading sunlight and fall colors contrasting the warm colors with a little bit of that blue sky. More of a panoramic view. I like the size. I like the way that you cropped it. Improvement. Bring a little bit more of that blue sky. Maybe try a different paper also, just for a different feel. Crystal Mill. Score, 13. Honorable mention. Wonderful composition of the mill and the trees and the stream with the use of thirds. I love the soft focus of the water. Good choice of shutter speed. Improvement. Bring out some of the details in the mill and some of the evergreens. This is another one of those that it was very different when I looked at it online. On your print, you needed to bring that out. I could see it clearly online. So that's a reason why you need to have practice prints. A lot of times if you can try one and see if you need to bring it out, then, keep trying until you get that just right, because it is very different when you look at it online. Frolicking in the Snow. Score, 13. Honorable mention. My eyes go directly to the focal point of the people in the window, left of center, and move around and capture everything that's going on in the photograph. I love the way that you could move your eyes around and you see something a little different each time. It held your attention. It was a great capture of a moment. The beautiful colors showing a joyful time for everyone involved. You had the red hat that catched my attention. The curve of the pizzeria sign draws me back into the restaurant, and looking at the personality of the building with the bricks and the wine bottles and the pictures that are on the walls. The people sitting at the table with their food and the wine and watching the scenery outside. It all rotated around. Wonderful, wonderful view. It is beautiful natural placement of everything. Improvement. Bring out the people inside the building out of the shadows. This is another one that once I saw it online, I could see the people sitting inside the building so much better than I could as your print. A Bull Rider. Score, 14. Third place. I have photographed rodeos and I know how difficult this is. And this is an absolutely wonderful photo. You were able to capture the arm going over the head. Love the angles of the tail and the arm and the bull's leg kicking out to the right in the opposite direction. It looks like the bull is focused on the photographer and his head is still, while there's just a slight bit blur of his body moving to give that movement feeling to it. Improvement. Your ISO, I say this with, I know how difficult it is with this kind of photograph to be able to capture it with no grain. If you're not able to use a flash, it's almost impossible because you have to use such a high ISO. The only way that you can make that better is if you use a strobe. Several strobes would be even better. I know how difficult this is. Also, your framing of the picture was wonderful. I love the way that you cropped it. A white mat would probably be a little bit better as well. And I want to say, just, keep doing what you're doing. I love the fact that you seem to get into that action. I can see the passion in this photo. So keep it up. Storm Coming, White Sands. Score, 14. Second place. A wonderful Ansel Adams feel to this photograph. Your landscape with the black and white and the shades and the lines is perfect. Your horizon line is just above or just below the midpoint, and I can feel the movement of the clouds. It draws me in seeing that movement and the lines in the sand. The shadows add to the feel as well. It is beautifully matted. You did an excellent job. As far as an improvement, maybe a little more detail in the plants, or if you move to another spot, just so that tall plant isn't quite in the middle, move it over to the right-hand side. If you had shifted over just a little, I think that would have made it a lot better. The Eyes of Titan. Score, 15, first place. Exquisite portrait of a full of detail. You have the full focus on the face and the eyes and the nose with a soft focus all around. The eyes tell a story. I love the way the moment I saw it, I just felt drawn in with this dog. It tells a wonderful story of softness, and yet one eye being in contrast blue while the other complements the color of the fur. I love the feel of it. The colors are excellent. The black whiskers, I felt like I wanted to touch them. I wanted to pet the dog and feel it. It's like a larger than life feeling. I love the way that you did it on the board without a mat. It gave a feeling of unrestrained feeling, more captivated. But if you had a mat, I think it would look just as good. I love the presentation. Excellent job. Advanced. Making faces. Score, 9. The lion's paw looks massive and reaches out towards the child, bringing in the interaction between the two. I'm assuming there is a glass between them, but you did an excellent job of not catching a reflection. There's great detail in the lion's mane. Improvement. Bring up the exposure just a tad in the child's face. I love the added humor with the tongue sticking out. Rowing. Score, 10. It's a nice panorama with the subject being placed in the lower quadrant of the photograph. Interesting subject surrounded by the water. Good reflection. Improvement. It appears a little bit flat. It needs some pop. Maybe add a little bit of contrast or bring up the exposure. Canyonland. Score, 12. The colors are beautiful with lines creating a Fibonacci kind of spiral. The details in the rocks and the haze in the sky complement the photograph. The exposure is perfect for the sky and the mountains in the area around, but try to bring down the highlights in the foreground and bring out some more detail in the arch above. Also, take care in your matting. Try to avoid fingerprints. The Silk Road. Score, 13. Honorable mention. Your colors are outstanding with the golds and reds and a touch of blue and green. The texture of the sand with varying lines are beautiful. I love the curvature of the camels walking along the curved line in the sand. The sunlight hitting on the back of the subjects from the right and creating shadows is beautiful. The eyes draw to the tuft of green, which is encircled by all of the camels and the people. Improvement. Try cropping about 3 inches tighter at the top, just for a more interesting feel. Kind of get rid of some of that extra space. Morning sunlight over aspen trees. Score, 13. Third place. I love the way the sunlight hits on the top of the trees and making the perfect horizontal line across the photograph, standing out against all the shadows. This is a photograph you could change the way it looks and feels by adding emphasis to specific areas in the photo. For instance, bringing up the exposure at the bottom will bring out the vertical lines of the tree trunks, or add exposure only to the small opening in the aspens will add some mystery to it. When I mention about the bringing up the exposure at the bottom to bring out the trunks of the trees, I noticed online I could see them a lot better, but your print was pretty dark. Town Lake. Score, 14. Second place. Exceptional choice of printing materials. I love the way you put it on the metal and the cropping into a panorama. Beautiful presentation. There's a lot of interest with vertical lines of the tree on the left and the diagonal created by the succession of lampposts. With the right side, the bushes burned in the corners. The colors are soft and yet they pop at the same time. I think the metal probably has a lot to do with this. Improvement. Try cloning out the blue-green pipe. It is such a brilliant color. And with it being in the center of the diagonal lines, the converging lines, your eyes goes directly to it, but it's not a very interesting part of the photo. I think it takes away from the rest of the photo. So I think if you would get rid of that, it would make the view much more interesting. Rupture ponders rust. Score, 15. First place. Excellent choice of paper, which accentuates the stone and the metals. The touch of green leaves and the red in the corner adds a lot of contrast. And it gives it a kind of a Romanesque feel with all the rust and the stone. And with the figure being beheaded, that is very interesting. I felt like I kept wanting to look at different parts of this photograph. And they complemented each other rather than fought against each other, making the viewer wanting to study it. It contains all of the criteria. It has originality, creativity, artistic views, technical excellence, composition was great. You could play with this one in a lot of different ways. Maybe change it to a sepia tone or put it on matte paper. Any variety of ways you could probably play with this and it would still be an excellent photo. Improvement. I would try to straighten it a little so that the figure isn't leaning. You had so much leaning going on that you tend to want to see that figure standing straight. Master. The Wave at Coyote Buttes. Score 8. There was a lot of interest in a variety of lines that flow, and contrasting blue sky against the land. There was a great use of thirds. Wonderful composition. The lines give it a sense of fluidity, moving from one area to the next. Improvements. There's a lot of dust that you can see in the photograph, which can be extremely distracting. I have experienced this problem myself before. It has to do with how much dust is inside your camera. And when you have such a small aperture, such as an f/16 or an f/22, it accentuates all of that dust. All of a sudden you can see all of that dust that's inside your camera. I would advise you to either take it in to get it cleaned, or you can buy a kit to clean your camera, and that would help immensely. So try, getting your camera cleaned, and that would help a lot. Sheriff and His Buddy. Score 9. Wonderful juxtaposition of a young versus old, innocent versus worldly, gentle versus tough. One looking at the camera, one looking away. I love the way you can see the sweat on the sheriff's brow, and yet the innocent child, of course, is not sweating. Improvements. It looks like the child is slightly out of focus. The focus is all on the sheriff, so that's something that you might want to watch for. And also be careful not to cut off the limbs, like the sheriff's arm. You cut off part of his arm, and that can be very distracting. Mather Point Sunrise. Score 10. Beautiful sun glare filtering down from the top left corner and shining on the rocks at the bottom right. Third of the photograph creating a diagonal line without blowing out the rocks and bringing out the green in the trees. This is an original view. So many things you see where you've seen different photographs taken, like, say, Multnomah Falls or something like that. You see it so often, but this is something that's unique, something I haven't ever seen before. Improvement. Play with this one in black and white to bring out some more texture. I think that would help a lot. Also, there's the one plant that kind of stands out, and my eye keeps going to that plant. You might want to try cloning it out. Lily. Score 11. You have lovely shades of creamy yellows, clear details of the petals and the stem with a soft blurred background. It's simple, but elegant. Improvement. The shade of the blue matte matches perfectly and would be wonderful hanging up in a house. But if you were to want to put it in a gallery, you would need a white mat. Ancient City. Score 12. I love the black and white tones, giving it an ancient feel. I love the detail in your roots in the tree and the juxtaposition of the ancient buildings. You have exquisite black and white sepia tone. It's soft, bringing out memories of another time. Improvement. It's very important to have your mats be precise. It looks like you might have used a blade that was dull, and so it was all jagged. If this print was put into a gallery, it probably could have placed first, second, third, but with that kind of matting, instead of it placing, it would have been kicked out. It wouldn't have even made it into the gallery. I can't stress how important it is to have your mats be precise. Morning in Monument Valley. Score, 12. This one has an Ansel Adams feel with the use of black and white, and its great composition with the horizontal and vertical lines and the use of thirds. It has nice details and the sunlight hitting on the rocks. It is a beautiful landscape portrait. Improvement. It seems a little too dark or a little too dull. You might want to try bringing some contrast in, but make sure not to blow out the highlights at the same time. Waiting. Score, 13. Brilliant colors, each area adding its own pop. Use of the horizontal and vertical lines in your composition is outstanding. Each item in the photograph calls your attention at some point, but nothing overpowers the other. Everything is complementary in color, shape, and size, creating a cohesive whole photograph. The jet ski adds a lot of interest to the otherwise quiet photograph. Improvement. You have a small smudge on the right-hand side a small spot on the bottom right-hand side that's a little bit distracting. I don't know if that's a rock or what it is, but that seems to take away from the otherwise perfect photograph. Also, try using a white mat. I think the black is a little too dark. It takes away from the photograph. Green Jay in South Texas. Score, 13. Beautiful composition and depth of field. The bird, the flowers, and the branch are all in perfect focus, but the background is blurred, making the photograph pop. I love the color combinations and the juxtaposition of the horizontal and vertical lines. It is well balanced. Improvement. Maybe bring out the eye just a little bit of the bird. That's the only thing I could really see. Fishing bear. Score, 13. Excellent action shot. I love the capture of the bear running through the water and creating a stop-action photograph. The composition is beautiful. You placed in thirds, both vertically and horizontally. The bear's paw looks massive. Nice highlight of the sun on the bear's head. There's great focus on the bear's face, with the nose is perfect heart shape. Improvement. Maybe bring out the eyes just a little, and try using a different kind of paper to make the bear and the water pop a little more. Spring sunrise in New Zealand. Score, 14. Honorable mention. The matching blues in the water and the sky with the green reflections set the tone. The green field is exquisitely balanced, and the highlights of pink from the sunrise on the mountain gives it a special mood. Overall, the photograph has a feeling of awe and serenity. The detail in the tufts of grass adds interest in the photograph. Improvement. The mountains almost blend with the sky, so you might want to see if you can bring out a little contrast or something and to separate the two. Also, watch the cleanliness of your mat and handle it with care. At the edge of the forest. Score, 15. Honorable mention. Exquisite detail in the trees and the field. Great presentation on the foam board. The trees at the edge add interest. The beautiful horizontal lines of the blues and the greens and the yellows with the vertical lines, as in the trees, in the right third of the photo. Improvements. Crop just a little tighter to the trees on the right-hand side. That extra space kind of brings it down a little bit, but if you crop it a little tighter to the trees, I think it would add a lot more interest. Red-eyed tree frog with fly in Costa Rica. Score, 15. Third place. Perfect contrast of colors, each item standing out. The exposure is superb. The composition is beautiful, and the detail in the skin of the frog and the wings of the fly are amazing. This is a beautiful photograph. The colors just really pop. Improvement. Just as something different, not necessarily an improvement, but something you might want to try. See how it looks as a vertical. Warm and cool. Score, 15. Second place. This has a sense of calm and relaxing and a sense of excitement at the same time. Its perfect silhouette of the land in the background, as well as the staff and the sail on the boat, while the boat itself is as soft but clear. The brilliance in the colors is phenomenal. Beautiful balance of hot reds, gentle oranges and yellows, and the cool blues at the bottom. It reminds me of a photo I took. It was in Tahoe, and I had a very similar one, but not even close to the color that this one is. It has absolutely wonderful, great presentation. I love the way that you presented it. The only improvement is maybe to bring out the white in the boat just a tad. Mushroom on black background. Score, 15. First place, and best of show. Exquisite detail in the mushroom with the swirling of the stem. Your lines are unbelievable. Your focus is sharp. The lines in the cap and the little piece on the top of the cap stand out brilliantly. You took an item from its natural element and creating a studio light setting for the background adds interest to it. Excellent job of making it appear as if it's standing perfectly on a studio surface. The shades of the black background makes the mushroom pop, and the halo effect gives a glowing feel, bringing the mushroom to life. It has an otherworldly kind of feel to it. It's unique in the fact that it is a studio shot that's been superbly edited. It's one of the rare photos that looked much better in print form than it did on the computer. It goes above and beyond in all of the criteria, in all of the categories, in making an exceptional photograph. Typically, I gravitate more towards the photos that capture a fleeting moment, such as like the fishing bear and the bull rider and things like that. But this one was so captivating, and I was in awe over the care that has been taken place in the photograph, from the setting it up to the editing it to masterfully printing it. The print was excellent. Good job. In closing, I would like to say I hope that my editing has helped you, my criticisms have helped you. Please remember that when a judge gives out awards and such, each judge is different. There is some excellent work here. Everyone, keep up the good work, and I hope that I have helped you in some way. Thank you.